Okay, so now we are going to graph piecewise functions. So level 1, you are going to graph and evaluate the piecewise function. So how we are going to graph them is if you see, these are your boundaries, okay? So the boundary is at 6 on both equations. So how we are going to do it is evaluate the function at the boundary point. There's your boundary point. You need to determine open or closed, which this is open, this is closed. Okay? Pick another x in the domain and evaluate it. So if there's only one number, that means you have to pick the other number. If there's two numbers, then you don't pick another number. The two numbers are already given to you. Like this one down here, you pick -3 and 2. You don't get a choice, okay? But the other ones, you do get a choice. Connect the points starting at the boundary point. That's important. We start at the boundary point and then repeat for the other pieces, okay? So what we are going to do, x value is 6. So if I plug in a 6, well, there's no other way to plug it in, so it's just 2. And that is going to be your open circle, okay? When you are picking, that is going to be where the arrow is. So a number less than 6. You can do 5, you can do 0, you can do any number you want as long as it's less than 6 because x is less than 6. So I'm just going to pick 0 because I want to. So now when I graph, I go 6 and up 2, and that is going to be my open circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and up 2. That's going to be my open circle. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can maybe do a better graph. 6. Okay. There, that's a little better. So now it says 0 was also 2. Whoops. And that is where I'm going to draw my arrow. So it's not an open circle. It's just a point on the graph. So it's my arrow. Okay. Now my second equation is at 6. If I plug it in, I still get -3 because there's no x value. And that one is closed because of the equal sign underneath. Okay. The other number is an arrow. So I need to pick a number greater than 6. I can pick any number. I'll just pick 7 is -3. So 6 -3. One, 2, 3. And there's my point. 7 -3. That is going to be the arrow it goes towards. So when you have numbers, they're going to be horizontal lines. And it looks like that. So that is my piecewise function. You don't have to do different colors. You can do it the same. I normally just do it the same. But since I have it here, I'm going to do just different. Just for fun. Okay, so let's do another one that there's actually an x that you have to evaluate. So your first point starts with a 2 because that's your boundary point. Okay, this is where we start. I plug it in. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 3 is 5. And that is going to be an open circle because there is no equal sign underneath. So I need to pick another number greater than 2. And you can be as creative as just 3, and that's fine. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 minus 3 is 9. If you pick a number too big, it might be off the graph, just so you know. So just kind of be aware of that as well. Okay, so that is the number I chose. That is where the arrow is going to go. So 2, 5 is an open circle. So 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is an open circle. And then, what was it? 3, 9? Yeah. So 3, 9, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is where the arrow goes. So that's my first piece in my piecewise function. So here I'm picking 2 because that's my boundary point. That's right here. And I plug it in. And that is going to be a closed circle because of this equal sign underneath. So 2 times 1/2 is 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. Now, when I pick another number less than 2, if I pick 1, it's a half, which is fine. That's not a big deal. But I like zeros too, because then they kind of get rid of, well, this time it gets rid of the half. So 0 times a half is 0, plus 3 is 3. So you can pick a number that's a little easier to graph too. So 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 0 is 1, 2, 3. And that's where my arrow is going. Now, if you did it the opposite way, so a lot of mistakes people make is that you go the wrong way. If I draw a vertical line, do you see how it crosses both of the graphs? And that means it's not a function. That means you did something wrong. Most likely you did the wrong direction. Okay? So instead of going from the boundary point to your point, you went from your point to the boundary point. So it makes, we always start here, always start here. Then go towards the arrow. Okay? So that's a big common mistake. All right, so let's see if you can do this one. And you don't have to graph it quite yet, but see if you can do the boundary point. So pause it and see if you can come up with your 2 points. Okay, so -1 times -2/3 is 2/3. 2/3 minus 1 is -1/3, -0.33. Okay, so this one has a decimal in it, and I chose -3 so it didn't have a decimal in it. If you didn't do that, don't worry about it. So -1, -1/3. -1, -1/3. Now, that gets really tricky. Not a big deal if it's not accurate, but it needs to be close, okay? So it needs to be between 0 and -1. And if it's not, then we have problems, okay? So -3, 1. -1, 2, 3, 1. There we go. Okay. So there's your first graph. -1, 2 is your closed circle. And I think it's 0, 0. Yep. Sorry with all the zooming in and out. And it goes towards the 0, 0. So there is my piecewise function. So hopefully maybe it's a little easier when I do a thicker line. If I do the vertical line test, it still works, okay? So it's still a function. There you go. Now we have 3 variables. Now the middle one is actually the easiest because I give you the 2 points. So 2 is your first point, -3 is your second point. You don't choose. That is your only options. So the 2 is an open circle. The 3 is a closed circle because of the lines. Here we have -3 and it's open. And here you have to choose. Here we have 2 and it's closed. And you have to choose. Remember, when you choose, it's an arrow. So now we just have to evaluate. So if I put in -3, I get out -1. I have to choose something that's less than -3. Less than -3 is -4. I still get out a -1. So now here I put in a 2. So 2 times 3/4 is 1.5. 1.5 is plus 2 is 3.5. Calculators are helpful. -3. I'm going to use mine just to make sure my brain is working here. Plus 2, I get -1/4, -0.25. Here I put in a 2, -4 plus 3 is -1. I need a number greater than 2. 3 is greater than 2. So that's -6. -6 plus 3 is -3. All right, so now I have all of my points. Now it's just graphing. So if the graphing part is the one that's tricky, make sure you are contacting your teacher. If evaluating is tricky, contact your teacher. Just making sure that you are figuring out which part is the hardest for you or where I came up with all these numbers, okay? Because otherwise we can't help you. So -3, -1 is an open circle. -3, 1, 2, 3 is an open circle. -4, -1. Whoops. So there is your first graph. Your next graph is 2, 3.5. Right? 2, 3.5. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.5. Is another open circle. But then the other one is closed. It's -3, -2.5. and that is closed. So those are just connected. So when you have boundaries on either end, there's no arrows. It just goes from closed to open, okay, or open to closed, however you connected them. Now the next one is 2, -1, and 3, -3. So 2, -1 is closed, and 3, -1, 2, 3, and that's where your arrow goes. So this is your piecewise function for this one. So this is your first 3-piece piecewise function. The middle one does not have arrows. So make sure that if you have 2 boundaries, you don't just add an arrow. A lot of people sometimes just kind of add an arrow. That's wrong. Okay, it's not a function, because if I would do the vertical line test, it would hit 2 lines. Okay. So if you have 2 boundaries, like the -3 and the 2, make sure that you don't do arrows. It's just open to closed, or open to open, or closed to closed, or whatever. If you have to choose a number like we did on the last one and the first one, that's where the arrows come in. Okay. All right. So that is graphing piecewise functions.